Hey, folks. So we're a couple days now after the event in Venezuela and the everything that went down over the weekend, which was awesome. What an amazing moment as an American, as a fan of liberty, as a fan of Trump, and yeah, I'm still enjoying that moment of we're the good guys because this weekend was a moment where you're damn right we're the good guys, and in fact, some of us were the heroes. And I think some of the heroes are right here in this video, and most of the heroes are on ships, in aircraft, in various operations rooms. Uh, there's so many people that had to be involved in this joint operation to capture Maduro. And man, they're not just heroes of that moment and of this past weekend. They're they're heroes of this hemisphere and the strategic consequences for the better that are going to the knock-on effects that are going to come from this heroic operation are almost incalculable. But in this video, I would like to try and calculate some of them. I would like to give you an overview of some of what we know, what we know now, and also uh, go over the strategic importance of what just happened. How oil is not the factor, but it is a factor in what is happening here. And no, it's not because the U.S. needs Venezuela's oil. It's more so because we want to deprive it from certain other countries. And then I'm going to get in my next video I'm going to get into the actual case against Maduro. So if you're new here, welcome. I am Just Human. I typically cover a lot of political court cases. That's my thing. But I also cover just current news and events as well. And if you're interested in following me or consuming more of my content or supporting the show, my link tree is in the description. It's also in my profile wherever you're watching or listening. And there you can find all the places to follow, watch, listen, and support. I make videos on Rumble and on YouTube. I also publish an occasional article over on justhuman.substack.com. I would love it if you read my article and left me input on what you think about it. I do a podcast, which is a long form show. I give extra commentary there and thoughts on things, and then I go over documents in detail, page by page. I'm a bit of a document nerd. That's kind of a theme on my channel. Is I love documents. So I will be getting to the Maduro indictment here in my next video. But for now, I want to focus on kind of a debrief of what occurred over the weekend and the strategic importance of it. This is your first time here. Welcome. Hit the subscription if you like, hit the subscribe button if you like the video, notification bell if you want to be notified whenever I upload. And yeah, so let us begin. All right, so after the Maduro operation had concluded and Maduro was on his way to New York City, which it was always going to be that way, but it is kind of it's a serendipitous thing, a very enjoyable thing, that the day after Mamdani gives a communist speech as he takes over New York City as mayor, the U.S. hours later captures one of the most notorious communists in the entire world and ships him in to that same city to stand trial. I love it. So with Trump, when he gave this press conference, he had some interesting words to say, and I'm going to need to unmute that tab if I want you guys to hear it, huh? So this is one of his comments that I wanted to highlight to begin this segment.
Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries. And not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal. But we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again.
Yes, the Monroe Doctrine. Not sure if you've heard of it before, the Monroe Doctrine. Some of us have been paying attention to Monroe for a very long time. And the doctrine that Trump is talking about is not nearly as attractive as this one, but it is more important, I have to say. Sorry, Marilyn. Few things here in Trump's words, and the number one thing I want to, is talking about Venezuela becoming more friendly with adversaries of the U.S. and adversaries of liberty itself. And the policy in D.C., the approach that D.C. has taken for so many years towards Venezuela and towards adversaries in general, whether it's their direct or indirect adversaries, has been appeasement, has been mitigation, appeasement, and looking at us as what are we doing wrong, and allowing them to operate, allowing our worst enemies to move closer and closer and closer into our neighborhood. There's a concept I'm going to mention a few times in this video that I call regions of responsibility. It's something that I made up with the help of a commenter to my show a long time ago, JB White. He called it regions of responsibility, and I've long seen Trump's part of the way Trump operates is that he views other countries as having the responsibility to clean up their own neighborhood. And when they don't do that, and it threatens U.S. Companies, U.S. citizens, or our allies, then we step in. And that's what's good. That's what's gone on in the Middle East. That's what's gone on in the Indo-Pacific. And now that's what's happening here in the Western Hemisphere. It's been a very long time coming. And it's not, this is has so much more strategic value than maybe immediately apparent to some. If you read the new national security strategy that the Trump admin put out 6 months ago, you probably wouldn't be super surprised that this happened, but you might be surprised and probably in awe of just how it went down. But the main line here, under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. That is in a single line. That is the point of how this operation went down, because it was a showcase of our ability to project our military power, combined joint operation power, with such exactness and speed, and to accomplish our objectives with barely a scratch on any vehicle or soldier. No other country can do that. The only one who comes close is Israel. But no other country can do anything like what we just did. And that has sent a chill down the spines of every adversary that we have. And not just because they don't want to tangle with us, but they don't want to tangle with any of our friends. And I made the point in my previous video that I put out on Rumble and YouTube, Maduro Captured, and that in my podcast is the first chapter of episode 361. And I wrote this on X, and I was very excited when I said it, and I still am excited to say it now. The message here, the message that Trump admin put out over the weekend, and the message that his admin has been putting out in the first admin, but definitely in the second admin from the very first moments it was sworn in, is don't fuck with commerce, don't fuck with our friends, and don't fuck with our citizens, don't fuck with our borders, don't fuck with America. And Rubio, in a more diplomatic, toned down way, said something similar during that press conference.
Out. This is a president of action. I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, you know, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States, and the president addressed it.
I'll get more into what exactly the threat is they're talking about. It's not just, oh, it's someone there who we don't get along with, or it's someone who's allied with other enemies of ours, such as Russia and Iran. Venezuela was a threat to this hemisphere, this country, our citizens, and to our allies. And there is a nexus of evil, an axis of evil, if you will, that Iran, Venezuela, China, and Russia all align on, and they enhance each other's ability, and they attack the U.S. through gray zone warfare. That's what it is. That's what these cartels are. That's what the fentanyl transportation, the fentanyl trafficking that happens into this country, the human trafficking, the criminals that they send across the border. Not all of them are criminals, of course, but there are a significant portion of those who come across our borders illegally who are absolutely criminals. Some of them are criminals that have received training by terrorist cells. And there has been too much fucking around for too long by these types of groups. And the entire time that the first year 2025 was all about this White House securing that border because of that gray zone warfare that was happening. We should be willing to confront it as what it is. It's paramilitary. Trinidad, Aragua, the Sinaloa cartel, all of these other groups, they are narco-terrorists, and they are conducting gray zone warfare against U.S. citizens in our country. And so many of them receive training, funding, equipment, and the drugs from Venezuela. And what did Venezuela get? Venezuela got money, billions and billions of dollars from Russia and Iran. For what? For their crude oil and for these operations, for their drugs. So much of terrorist operations around the globe are financed by the trafficking of humans and narcotics and weapons. And Venezuela was a mega store of those things. And Venezuela, in return, besides getting billions and billions of dollars from Iran and Russia and China as well, Venezuela also got lots of weapons. And so this right here is not just a capture of a longtime enemy of the U.S. who is a drug lord and that Trump singled out, and U.S. just wants his oil. No, there's a reason why. What was the bounty on Maduro? Either 25 or $50 million. There are reasons backing up why that bounty was so high on him. Because he was the leader of a country whose entire existence was aimed at undermining the U.S. and harming our citizens, as well as harming our allies, as well as being a benefactor and a beneficiary to Russia, China, Iran, and narco-terrorists everywhere. A reporter asked Trump, and actually, I'll just let it play. I'll let it play. This right here.
Has something of a mixed track record of
Sorry, that's a bit loud. I apologize.
The U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards. Did that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
Peace through strength doesn't mean we go in and we occupy and we conduct this regime change operation that takes decades to do. But have you noticed how many people who supposedly are on the right, who are supposedly Trump fans, are so eager to criticize and jump on a fear-mongering bandwagon of, oh, we're going to go into another war. I don't want my son to die for Israel. I don't want us to, we're going to repeat Vietnam. You notice how many on the right who pretend to be fans of Trump so often are so quick to sound like leftist of the 2000s and leftist of the late 60s and early 70s. It should tell you something about those people. Do with it what you will, but you should remember that. You should remember that. Because Trump's track record is not one of sending the U.S. military in and then getting our military mired in some sort of long-term operation without end goals, with unfair, ridiculous rules of engagement. No. Trump says, hey, military guys, what do you need to accomplish your objectives? You got it. Here are your objectives. What do you need from me? Here's my authorization. Go do it. They accomplish the objective. They get out. This is not the Bush admin or the Obama admin. This is the Trump admin. And it's remarkable how quick so many are to undermine the president they claim to support. All right, so getting a little bit more into the operation that actually took place. It's been leaked that the CIA had someone in Maduro's inner circle who gave us a lot of intel on his movements, and in fact described the removal of Maduro as an inside job aided by some of the country's own military. And I'm not sure how much I like this leaking out, but there's been reports that we knew the CIA was operating. If you remember Ratcliffe, earlier this year, there were articles about how Ratcliffe had authorized, and Trump had authorized Ratcliffe to put the CIA on the ground in Venezuela and to conduct operations there. And again, some of those same people who somehow seem to always have the talking points of China and Russia and Iran. Funny that we're complaining about this action. You know, there's far too many people who, when they see the acronym CIA, they immediately want the CIA, they want it destroyed along with other three-letter acronyms that make up the U.S. security apparatus. And that really tells you a lot. Anyway, so the CIA did a lot of groundwork. That's the main thing to take away from this. I'll try to get off of shooting flack over at people who are false allies. Apologies. Stay on target. So the CIA did a lot of groundwork leading up to this, as did Space Force. And, you know, none of us really know what Space Force does, but Space Force was essential to this operation, which was called Operation Absolute Resolve. And it was a precision strike to accomplish these objectives, and it took over 150 aircraft. It took thousands of people, dozens and dozens, if not over 100 naval resources, multiple U.S. bases. And so many of the people who were deployed to conduct this operation, they're already headed home, or they're headed to other theaters of operation, which is pretty amazing. We went in, we got done what we wanted to get done, and then we pulled out. We also know for a fact that the RQ-170 Air Force drone, which is a really kick-ass drone that we barely know anything about, was in operation over Venezuela while this happened. And the F-35s were absolutely essential to it with their ability to coordinate the entire battlefield. There's just so many elements here that made this take place, and it's worth listening to what uh the Air Force admiral had to say about it. I'm just going to go ahead and just play this because I just think it's absolutely extraordinary. This may be the most extraordinary, the most impressive thing the US military has done in its entire history, and that I don't think that's too big of a claim.
Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted.
Sorry, I said Air Force General. It's Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
During the darkest hours of January 2nd, and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise, and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the President said, they could be brought to justice. And as the President said earlier today,
and also choosing a day where there was a certain Chinese delegation in Caracas that had just met with Maduro and was doing deals with him, which is something the U.S. cannot tolerate. We could not tolerate China getting any closer to Venezuela. We cannot tolerate China operating in this hemisphere. And this was a message to China. Big time. Big time. So that was also important in choosing which day we would execute the operation.
Weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings, but when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the President ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire Joint Force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard.
We don't know this for sure. I don't know that, I haven't seen any confirmation of it. But you know, some of those first videos that we saw that came out, over here, Suchomimus. Thank you to somebody who sent me a link to how to pronounce it. Suchomimus. It's a dinosaur. It's the name of a dinosaur. So, you know, like we saw these videos of helicopters flying overhead, right? And, you know, it's like this person's on a balcony and they've kind of like woken up and realized something's going on and there's some sort of attack happening, right? And right here, there is a helicopter right there. Okay. Which was spotted by someone on X, right? You see that Chinook there? Now, it's that helicopter is over at this bunker at a military base in Caracas. And while so many of us thought, including myself, we thought that what happened was that Maduro got taken from his palace. But that's not the case. He was taken from his bunker. It would appear anyway. It appears he was taken from his bunker over here, okay? So here's where that helicopter is. Okay, now, so you see later on in this video, or in some of the videos that we've seen, like here's Caracas, right? It's north is up here. North is where the U.S. forces are in the Caribbean, right? And as people start picking apart these videos, they realize that the helicopters, where is it, right? Or at least theorized, not realized, I should say theorized, that the helicopters we see flying overhead, which helicopter? I want to find that specific helicopter video. Here, let me go to the Warzone article and see if they have it. I want to find the specific helicopter video that I'm thinking of. I know I could go to another video on that same channel. I may have should have just done that. So here, let me just do that. So I was in my last video, I was talking about where I couldn't remember the name of the stick pushing out of the helicopter, the refueling probe. So we saw these videos, right? Okay. So it's been right here, you see those helicopters out there. There's explosions in the background, right? So we interpreted at first that these helicopters, I mean, how many did we just see right there? There's like 8 of them. We interpreted at first these helicopters were going in. This appears to be them leaving as these explosions happen. This is not them going into Caracas as these explosions happen. This is the US. These are helicopters leaving. The operation already took place. So it's starting to look, what's starting to look like is that, and that it's just a theory, okay, but it makes a lot of sense. It seems like helicopters that Space Force or like a part of the operation was that Space Force, Cybercom, and other assets blinded Venezuelan radar or disabled it or interfered with it, jammed it, whatever, hacked it, gave it a false radar picture, whatever. I don't know. Maybe they did all of those things. But they neutralized the threat of Venezuelan anti-air defenses and their visual picture of the battle space. And it seems that the helicopters went in and went around and approached that base from the south. And that makes a lot of sense if you look at the way Caracas is laid out. That military base is right here in the south of the city. And instead of the helicopters going direct from the Caribbean over all of this area of the city, they either went around here, or they went around there, I don't know. But they took a different path while all of these air defense systems and radars were blinded or disabled or whatever. They came in, they got Maduro, and when this person steps out, as the explosions happen, that's as the U.S. helicopters are leaving. They already have Maduro. Those helicopters are flying north, folks. Out. And as they're flying out, these explosions are happening. The U.S. is bombing all of these other objectives as they leave, which I'll get in this video, I'll get to in a minute what some of those might have been. And it just changes the way you interpret what went down. It wasn't strike, 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 and then the helicopters go in. Or simultaneous, it's the helicopters went in and got Maduro. They did what they needed to do. And then as they're leaving, F-35s, F-22s, other assets are hitting these other targets in there, which I'll get to what those probably were. It's incredible. It's incredible. So far, in all the things I've looked at, the only anti-air deployment against our forces I've seen was one Igla, one shoulder-fired surface-to-air missile that hit the side of the mountain, and then some gunfire that was maybe, I don't know what it was from, but there was some machine gun or anti-aircraft fire against one of our helicopters that did hit the helicopter but didn't disable it. And then I think that's what the AH-1 Cobra video was. That's the Cobra responding to it with their rockets, is that they're destroying that vehicle who got on. So in this video, you remember we were watching, and I was commenting on how disorganized and like this video. There's been several videos that have come out of this activity around the palace where they seem like they're searching around, they're searching every vehicle that's coming around, and it just seems they seem disoriented. And there's been lots of videos that have come out that show some Venezuelan forces around the palace that look completely like they're panicked, right? Well, they were. They were panicked because the U.S. came in and took their leader, and then on the way out started bombing objectives before these guys were anybody even realized. Before anybody even realized what was happening. And the palace is right there. That fort is down this way, built into a side of a mountain. And that's where, it seems like that's where Maduro was. And we raided that mountain complex, got him out. It's just amazing. All right, back to the back to the overview from Dan Kane.
The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise.
See, that the way he phrases it right there just makes me think even more that we came in right somewhere through this ridges or over this ridge, somewhere through here, and they had blinded the radar and jammed them or given them a false radar picture of what was going on, and they had no idea these helicopters were coming. They had no clue. 1/60th SOAR combined with Space Force and just the whole all of these different elements working in concert. It's like it's a symphony. I hope folks appreciate what an amazing symphony this is. I can't. I can get that off of there. All right, let me go back.
As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time.
Which those videos that started coming out, when did they start coming out? They started coming out 2 a.m., 3 a.m. for us. That's when we started seeing local videos. So we were there operating, doing the mission long before the war anybody realized. And then we get all these videos of people walking out from their sleep, like, what is going on? And we're already leaving. Delta Force is already leaving with Maduro.
And the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world.
Our foes across the globe are in awe, and they are also in fear that we were able to do this. We were able to defeat so many elements of defense that Venezuela had, and those were Iranian and Russian supplied pieces of equipment that, I believe it's in this article, were easily defeated. And I don't, at least we made it appear easy to defeat them. I don't know how easy it actually was. Maybe it's not in this article that they have it. That's some of the aftermath. Those are some Buk 2s, Russian supplied air defense vehicles that Russia recently gave to Venezuela. It wasn't in that article. Joshua Steinman is one of the main architects of this. And so, this is probably the best day of his life. He's a great follow on X, but Joshua Steinman is he says we re-architect the way the U.S. operates in cyberspace with NSPM 13 during Trump 45, and it was for this purpose. And so, shout out to him and everybody involved in that work, because I don't know. It's not my area of expertise, but I just think there's just so many people involved that factored into this brilliant operation, and he is one of them. He is one of them, back from the first Trump admin. And they made, as Victoria Coates said, they made Venezuela through cyber means missile defenseless. We've already seen, as Dawson points out, we've already seen how shitty Russian air defense systems are thanks to the Ukraine war. And then also in Iran, we saw Israel and the US together defeat all of the Russian supplied air defense systems in Iran. But, there's, we kind of looked at that operation and thought, okay, well, it's F-35s and F-16s and it's B-2. So it's not the same, it's like, well, yeah, they defeated that Russian hardware and it's operated by Iranians. So, okay, maybe not the best test of the capabilities of it, but this was plugging in a dozen helicopters into the operation zone. And they didn't get one shot off. So it's just on a whole nother level of defeat of those systems. And it really makes you question just against what are these systems effective? And so Moscow and Iran and China, which also has some of the same systems, same components, they know now that when the U.S. wants to defeat your defenses, they can. If there's an objective that the U.S. wants to get to, we can get to it. And we can even get to it without a single loss of any of our equipment or our personnel. So the aftermath of it, there's some videos and some satellite photos that have come out showing the destruction of significant portions of the Venezuelan military, but the Venezuelan military was not all that great of a thing to look at anyway. So it's a lot of Russian supplied stuff. So, but it didn't work. And we got, yeah, here it is. So some of the things we bombed over there as we left appear to be a bunch of vehicles. They might have been some of the other components of Russian systems that were supplied. And we know they had the S-300 and Buk systems and also one other that I can't remember the name of. But we also, that's some of the things that were hit. But there's also this building. Let's see. So if you look at this satellite image, take note of this area and then this area. I'll open it up. And then this is the entrance. So, okay. So right here, this area near this baseball field, and then this area, these buildings right here. After we were done, you can see there's nothing left. This impact, we didn't bomb the baseball field. The smoke just going over the baseball field. We hit these buildings here, and then these buildings down here. Very precise. Extremely precise, and the complete destruction of those buildings and everything inside them. What was inside them? I do wonder. Here is the entrance to the bunker, and we destroyed that too. I don't know if the B-2 sent a missile right through the door of it. I don't know if Delta Force set some charges and destroyed it as they left. I don't know, but I don't know. Maybe one day we'll find out some more about why that was done and how it was done. See if there's anything else I want to show you about this destruction. This debris field right here, you see this is the building. You can see those are trucks lined up right there. This debris field makes me think of drones. Tons of drone parts everywhere. Could be wrong, but they're white or gray. Tons of little components everywhere. And we hit all those trucks look destroyed. You can see there were maybe some vehicles inside that building right there. Not sure. This is another place that we hit. Not sure what was in it. It looks like a guard post, but not sure exactly what it was used for. But we said, screw you. And I don't know, maybe we took some fire from this. Maybe there was a vehicle here, or there was some sort of anti-aircraft system here. And so we hit it to destroy it. But it looks like you see the debris field spreads this way and then spreads this way. So it makes me think maybe the helicopters hit it like rocket fire. Don't know. Just speculating. Let's see. I think that's about it for that. Okay. Now it's time to talk about something else about this. We'll learn more about the operation and its contours later. But right now I want to shift to talking to you about here's one more thing I wanted to show you. Some of my tabs got out of order. That's my bad. Okay. In my previous video, I highlighted these buildings that were in the harbor. And then later, a secondary explosion set off everything here. That was one secondary explosion, but these are completely destroyed now. And I think there was some military hardware in here that they had received from Iran or Russia that we decided to take out. And I think what you see cooking off are maybe some missiles or components of drones. I'm not sure, but I think, yeah, there's something military in there that we decided to hit on the way out. All right, now I need to set up my tabs for what I want to present to you next, because next we're going to talk about how oil is a factor in all of this. Just a moment. All right, first just a little bit more on this. So this place being destroyed, these warehouses, and then what I showed you here with these images. And maybe there's some more that have come out that I haven't come across yet. But you should know that recently Iran invested $20 billion in loans to Venezuela. And some of the things they sent over to Venezuela were equipment and weapon systems for building drones. And those are gone. The U.S. struck a facility in that port that housed manufacturing or assembly machines for Iranian drones. It had ties to Hezbollah. And Iranian made drones such as the Ansu 100. They've been destroyed. They also had a training center there for Islamic terrorists. Destroyed. That's what you're seeing in this video here. Are those things being destroyed? That's why when the vice president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, who fled to Russia, just headed this operation, but is pretending she's in charge of Venezuela and is demanding the U.S. return Maduro. When you see her say things like, it's the Jews' fault, governments around the world are shocked that the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela is a victim and target of such an attack, which without a doubt has Zionist tones. The reason she's saying that is because the relationship between Venezuela and Iran is very close. The relationship between Marxist and Islamo-fascist, Islamo-Nazis, Islamism is very close. There's a Marxist-Islam alliance, and you see that play out all across the globe. And yeah, it's a topic we've talked about before. But that's why she says things like this. And while she goes to the UN and she goes to Russia and she tries to keep herself safe, I said in the video initially, I was captured about. I mentioned something about people blaming Jews for this operation. It almost seemed a little far-fetched, but I knew what I was getting at, but I didn't know how many people would get it. I did not expect the VP of Venezuela to directly confirm what I was saying and echo the sentiments of people like Tucker Carlson and all these other asshats that we have that have infiltrated MAGA. Okay, that's another topic. All right, so Trump said this, and a lot of people seized on it. Let me mute this.
Blockade.
Whoa, that was way too loud. I am sorry.
Not going to let anybody going through that shouldn't be going through. You remember they took all of our energy rights. They took all of our oil from not that long ago, and we want it back. But they took it. They illegally took it.
So what he's talking about is when Venezuela took over the Citgo operations and other oil extraction and refinement and exportation that had been built by American companies. And this, of course, is a comment by Trump that many that are woke and that are code pink idiots, and the it's so difficult. These dumbasses we have inside of MAGA seize on and are trying to make this thing out to be. In a way, it is about oil. It is about oil. One of the places that we're going to see directly affected by this is going to be Cuba, because Cuba is a direct benefactor of the sale of oil from Venezuela.
Has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And
wait, what was that? What was that?
Has no income. They got all of their income from Venezuela, from the Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. And Cuba literally is ready to fall. And you have a lot of great Cuban Americans that are going to be very happy about this.
Cuba is ready to fall, and we might see that happen very soon. Just to illustrate just how close the Cuba-Venezuela relationship was, Maduro's guardsmen, his security team around him were Cuban, not Venezuelan. And I would guess that they were Russian trained. I bet a lot of them are dead now. So Cuba, we might see Cuba fall here really, really soon. And that's going to create, I would expect that might create some sort of humanitarian crisis. So be prepared for various people to blame Trump for a human crisis in Cuba that was actually caused by the communist regime there and by Venezuela, by Maduro. But I would kind of expect Cuba. It's going to become a humanitarian situation, but it'll be way better in the long run. It's been so long in coming. The Cuba problem should have been solved so many decades ago. Before I was born, it should have been solved, but it takes courage. So the oil. Here's how oil is a factor, and I was alluding to it earlier. This is a post by Oleg Deripaska, one of Putin's allies in Russia, and someone who's been indicted in the U.S. multiple times over, I believe, and who is a part of the Russiagate conspiracy. Russian billionaire Oleg Deripaska warns that if the U.S. secures control over Venezuela's oil fields after already moving into Guyana, it could end up overseeing more than half of the world's reserves. In his view, Washington would then be able to hold oil prices near $50 a barrel, putting serious pressure on Russia's state capitalist economic model. Do you remember in my other video I said about how there's a threshold with the price of barrel of oil, and how it goes too low, then it costs more to extract than it does to sell? And I was talking about it, U.S. oil prices, and how we've seen prices falling at the gas pump, and how there's a threshold price that is kind of ideal for it to be at. Well, for Russia, it's the same thing. Russia needs oil prices to stay well above $50 a barrel because they export oil, and that's how they fund their whole economic model. And one of the reasons that Ukraine has been hitting so many Russian oil refineries lately, a lot of oil refineries. Let me show you some of how many they've hit. Okay, so here's a map, which is actually, it doesn't look like it comes across on the screen very well, but a dozen strikes of oil refineries in Russia that Ukraine had carried out in 2024. But as this year went forward, Ukraine accelerated those hits. And some of these major refineries they hit, they weren't just, hit and then it partially damaged them. These were major strikes that either completely took these refineries offline or permanently, or just incapacitated them for a very significant period of time. It's going to take a very long time for them to be repaired. Here's a map as of July of all the strikes that Ukraine had done on Russian oil. And here is another map showing with a little bit more granularity that over 60% of all of the strikes that Ukraine has carried out against Russian oil ops occurred this in 2025. Let me take that down because there's more right down there. This has taken somewhere around 50 to 60% of Russia's ability to refine oil in their country offline. And this is critically important for the Russian economy and the Russian war effort. They have to be able to refine this oil, to export it, to refine it, to use it to fuel their army, and to fuel, literally, figuratively, and not, their own economy. William Spaniel, who runs the YouTube account Lines on Maps, or does the show Lines on Maps, which is an excellent YouTube channel, put out a video about the oil situation, or at least had a segment about the oil situation. We've been talking a lot about all of these shadow fleet operations in the Caribbean. Well, who does that shadow fleet work for? Russia, Iran, Venezuela. They work for sanctioned countries, shipping their oil around the globe to whoever will buy it. And with Venezuela off the market, Venezuela can't export, and the exchange can't happen. With Russian oil refineries being hit, they can't export. They're not able to refine it and export it. So the shadow fleet can't go there. In Iran, they can go there, but Iran's also in a lot of trouble. But this shadow fleet, you can think of them as oil traffickers, okay? It's like, what's the word for it? It's like they're basically like drug traffickers in a way, but not the same. But like the business model of it. Okay, black market trading is what's going on. By the way, this is a image of John Kerry with the VP of Venezuela. Make of that what you will. So for a long time, people on the Democrat side have been accusing Trump of being in cahoots with Putin and them being friends, or Trump being some sort of asset of Putin and them secretly working together. And we've gone through this. We've been the victims of a psychological operation. Both people on the left and the right have been victims of a psychological operation, an info war operation here in the US to try and convince us that this man is the bad guy and this man is actually a good guy, or vice versa. And we've all, to some degree, I think, fallen victim to it. And I'll put my hand up and say I have as well, where I've thought, okay, maybe Putin and Trump actually do have a really good relationship and are working together behind the scenes or something. And I felt I was pushed that way by, one, the left's reaction to Trump and their hatred for Trump and them always trying to associate him with Russia, and also the hysteria from the left about Russia, Russia, Russia. And we got so sick of it. Us on the right got so sick of hearing about it, right? Or correct, I should say. And so it pushed us into a defensive posture. And Russian operations took advantage of that and disseminated tons of propaganda to try and convince us that actually Russia were good guys and that maybe Trump and Putin do work together. And I'll put my hand up and say that I was susceptible to that influence, very much so. And I honestly regret how much I participated in pushing that stuff. Not knowingly doing it, but just how serious I took that possibility, and how I've allowed it to get into my head. But as it went on, especially last year and the year before, in 2024, and I really started changing my mind in 2024. There was just way too many contradictions. There were too many things that didn't make sense, and the world just made way more sense if Putin is the actual horrible, horrible person that I previously believed him to be. And the more I went and looked into it, the more I found that there was a ton of Russian propaganda out there aimed specifically at MAGA to get us to excuse this man and to view him in a positive light, and to see Ukraine and Zelensky in an extremely negative light. And unfortunately, a lot of accounts have gotten very big pushing Russian propaganda. And that sucks. And it's something that on the right, we've been, it's almost like that thing where you defend your abuser. It's kind of what the right does right now. But anyway, that's a separate topic. But back to this. So these are what the strikes look like that Ukraine has carried out against Russian oil refinery and gas facilities. And plus the shadow fleets, because there's some strikes out in the Black Sea against those merchant ships, that Ukraine has carried out across this year. And this has severely hurt Russia, severely hurt them. And then when you look at the lines, the actual pipelines of these areas, you can overlap that with these strikes, and you see that they're not just hitting individual facilities, they're hitting core facilities or junctions in Russia's ability to move oil and gas. And that, combined with what happened with Nord Stream, which Ukraine was also responsible for, but they won't admit, plus some other strikes of ships that Ukraine hasn't admitted to, but they definitely did, perhaps with the assistance of the US, it becomes clear that Russia is in a very, very bad position because of these hits. And then when you combine that with what the US just did in Venezuela, it makes it very clear that Trump has just given some of the greatest, most significant help to Ukraine's effort to defeat Russia that they've ever been gifted. This is better than shipments of Patriot missiles and HIMARS. This is better than F-16s going to Ukraine. This is so much more significant than direct military assistance to Ukraine, because this helps destroy that shadow fleet, and it helps keep the price of barrel closer to $50 a barrel on the world market. And the longer it stays down there, just like Oleg Deripaska said, the longer it stays down in this neighborhood of $50 a barrel, the worse it is for Russia, because Russia extracting and refining oil and exporting it does have a cost. And if they can't do that and make enough of a profit, their economy collapses. They can't fuel their tanks. They can't, or their motorcycles or ATVs that they're sending into trenches in Ukraine. It's, the media on the left and Euro idiots try and portray Trump as being friendly to Putin, and he's not. He's friendly from a leader of one state to the leader of another state, right? But it basically ends there. And you should make no mistake about it. You should not misunderstand this. The US and Russia are in a gray zone war. We are in an undeclared war against each other. If you want to think of it as the Cold War never ended, fine. I think it just got paused. I think that's fair enough. But we are still very, very, very much adversaries. And if you want to think of Ukraine as a proxy war between the US, NATO, and Russia, that's also fair enough. But that's the reality of it. You can love it, you can hate it, doesn't matter. That's the reality of it. And the reality is also that Trump has done more to help Ukraine defeat Putin, defeat Russia, than Obama or Biden or any other US president. And I predicted back in 2024, that after Trump was sworn in, we would see some sort of massive deal for US assistance to Ukraine. And in my mind, I was picturing a whole lot of military hardware as well as money and ammunition. We've seen some of that, but not all. And what has instead happened is, so many people on the right who don't even, and on the left, who don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to acknowledge any assistance that Trump has given Ukraine, even though he has given them significant assistance. But Trump has been very smart about it, because so much of that assistance has been coming from Space Force and from the CIA. And now from the capture of Maduro. So what Oleg is talking about, and he would know, is absolutely correct. And to that, I say good. And for any of you who still feel inclined to defend Russia, to defend, as I have done in the past, to defend what Russia is doing in Ukraine, as I have done in the past. So I'm not placing myself above anybody. I'm not saying I'm smarter than you or anything like that. I fell for it too, guys. I fell for it too. But understanding is greater than reacting, right? And I think a lot of where we've all come from in our defense of Russia, or maybe our ambiguity on the topic, has been a little bit more reacting to what the left in America accuses us of and accuses Trump of. And I think it's been a lack of understanding of what's actually been happening there. There's also a lot of consumption of propaganda specifically aimed at you. This is something else. I know I'm kind of trekking into this topic again, but we, especially us in MAGA, it's apolitical in some sense, but it's particularly those of us who have supported Trump all along. We've had very specific psychological and information ops and influence ops aimed at us, tailored to us by very smart and capable people in Iran in Russia, in China. They have figured us out, and they have known how to run influence ops and information ops to program us to say things that are to their benefit. And it sucks, but it's the truth. It always sucks to be fooled. It feels awful to be fooled. And it is far more difficult to admit when you have been fooled. Oh, it's so difficult. But facts are facts. And there's way too many people in MAGA who refuse to admit they've been fooled, who refuse to entertain that idea. But we've got to confront it. And we've got to confront that some of the biggest influencers and accounts and outlets in MAGA got a one side of their mouth speak that they support the president, but out of the other side of their mouth just spew Russian and Iranian and Qatar and Chinese talking points, CCP talking points. We have to confront that. We have to confront that. And we have to root it out of the movement, out of the Republican Party. And it starts on the individual level, you know? It sucks, but sometimes when the shoe fits, right? All right, so back to the topic at hand. So I really liked Adam Housley's commentary on this. Everything about this operation in Venezuela sends a signal to China and Russia and Iran. It's about oil too, but all the political critics are they're missing. All the political critics are missing is it's not about oil for us. It's about keeping the oil from them and also properly compensating the Venezuelan people. It's going to take a while, but eventually people are going to realize that what Trump just did not only hurt our adversaries, it helped people in our own hemisphere. When you see American companies welcomed back into Venezuela to re-engage and to take back over those facilities, and there's tons of American companies investing in Venezuela, the usual suspects are going to say, see, I told you it was a war for oil. The U.S. is taking over the oil in Venezuela. No. Give it some time, and there's going to be a whole bunch of Venezuelans who are suddenly middle class, who are suddenly have excellent jobs in that industry, and it will be a new country, and it will be it'll have such a positive impact on South America and on trade in the Caribbean. And at the same time, be a denial of operation, a denial of influence to China, Russia, and Iran. I like J. Michael Waller's comments on it. By acting in Venezuela and aiding the Iranian opposition, Trump might have prevented an imminent invasion of Taiwan. What? Yeah. Check it out. Beijing needs oil that is not subject to U.S. pressure. China's an importer, guys. They're not an exporter of oil. They're an importer, a massive importer. That means Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. That's where China gets their oil, and also from the other places in the Middle East, but we've been working against that lately. China has been buying 60 to 90% of Venezuelan and 80 to 90% of Iranian crude. 30 to 35% of China's importation of oil is from those countries. And we just eliminated a huge chunk of that. Watch us do it again in Iran. Guys, if we take out 35%, if we deny, I shouldn't say take out. If we deny China's ability to import 1/3 of their oil, they cannot invade Taiwan. They can't invade anybody. Right now, about 35% of oil into China comes from Arab suppliers that are subject to U.S. guidance or pressure. With new governments in Venezuela and Iran, if the opposition in Iran succeeds, and God willing they will, the U.S. will be able to regulate up to 70% of the CCP's present day oil needs. There won't be a need for the U.S. and China to go to war over Taiwan. We can jack up the price or lower the price of oil or deny the sale of it to them, period. CCP war planners cannot execute against Taiwan under those conditions. This takes pressure off the U.S. and the Indo-Pacific for a while, to the net benefit of American NATO commitments in Europe. Think about some of the ramifications of Trump's Venezuela action. Possible disruption of Chinese plans to invade Taiwan and control its cutting-edge AI chip manufacturing. Huge defeat for China's strategy to dominate Latin America. We are telling China the message. Again, what was Trump's message? American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Who was questioning it? Russia, Iran, and especially China. Who was in Caracas when we conducted this operation? A Chinese delegation. The loss of face for Xi Jinping, who cannot afford to look weak in the middle of his latest military purge, denying Venezuela's heavily discounted oil to China, giving China more leverage to demand steeper discounts from Russia and make the Ukraine war more costly. Russia is now in the position where China is going to be going to Russia for more oil. So Russia needs that oil for their own economy. So they want to sell it, but they also need it for the war. The enhancement of America's ability to meet its treaty commitments abroad. The intelligence bonanza to come out of Venezuela about the corruption of political systems worldwide and here at home. Now, there's a topic I haven't ventured into yet. What does this man know about operations here in the U.S. to destabilize our country, to corrupt our country, to corrupt our politicians, to interfere in our elections? What does this man know about that? What other intel did the U.S. gather while they were there? We know Delta Force captured Maduro and his wife. Did they happen to take anything else with them? Don't know. It's an interesting possibility, isn't it? All right. So the strategic important, I made a post about black pillars that I included in my first coverage of this. And I kind of ranted a bit, right? I did. I ranted a bit because I hate black pillars. But one of the things I said in that is what Trump just pulled off in Venezuela. Everything from the boat strikes, the blockade, the capturing Maduro and his wife. At the time, I thought it was out of the palace. I was wrong. This is orders of magnitude more important and more consequential for America, this hemisphere, and the world than locking up whichever crooked U.S. politician you're obsessed with hating. I absolutely mean that. It's orders of magnitude more important and more consequential for this country and this hemisphere and the free world than just about any other single law enforcement action you can think of, or that has happened before it. This is all time. God bless this man. And the man beside him, Rubio, who I very much hope I get to vote for. I hope we all get to vote for Rubio for president in 2028. I'm all aboard. I'm all aboard on Rubio 2028. 100%. He's the guy. He's the guy, right? All right. Now, I think I'm ready to dive into the Maduro indictment. I don't know if you can hear my dog whining. He's what? Oh, you got your bone. I got a bone too. It's the Maduro case. Yeah. All right. All right. Thanks, folks. It's time for the indictment reading. Yeah. All right. I'm going to play with these dogs, and then I'm going to come sit back down behind this mic and dive into the indictment. See you in a minute.